This section of the book is called Spring Again, and it takes place many years after all the action that's just taken place. This chapter is called Coming Home. When a shoot rises from the ground, it's easily cut down, but if there's no one there to weed, it grows into a hardy shrub or tree. So it was with California's native tobacco plant that stretches for the sky with dangling yellow flowers, braided hair extensions. When the shoot of a tobacco weed breaks through the soil, it's easy to pull out. Wait a year, you can cut it down with a machete. The third year, you might need an axe with a home run swing. After the fourth year, a chainsaw, and during that time it has spread its yellow seeds, and now there's a tobacco grove as dense as a bamboo forest. The same with sumac, California lilac, manzanita, sagebrush, and live oak. San Diego land cleared for a kiwi farm, golf course, or even a vineyard. When abandoned, nature moves in. Nature abhors a vacuum. Girls grow up and get married. Time moves on. Places never stay the same. Since the events of the last chapter, so many years ago, nature has been busy. Nature who, with California sunshine and just enough water, even in drought, never in doubt, never stops, keeps moving, keeps growing, has reclaimed the property once known as Blue Merle Vineyard. The property passed from Paul to his daughter, who found life in the country contrary to her taste and settled along the coast, renting the country house, ignoring the land, until it was time to sell. O terra, terroir, what has become of you? The land Paul vowed never to give up, the land he saved from bank foreclosure and devastating wildfire, for sale. Paul reaped what he sowed. He left with nothing, and nature reclaimed what was hers. 3 muses, unamused, moved on, and Paul, without dog, without wife, without children, with children grown and gone, without muses, lived alone, far away, in isolation. Marcy married and was never heard from again in these parts. Rachel divorced and became the managing director of a modern dance company in New York City. When she tried to look up Paul, she couldn't find him. None of their classmates knew his whereabouts. Jane, inspired by a winemaking dog, became a master sommelier and passed the exam her first try, blowing away the judges with her uncanny nose and looks. She concentrated her energy making her business a wine-inspired fragrances, successful, encouraged by a winemaker. Starting from nothing, first-year sales were slightly south of $700,000, then pulled between the urges to get a real job and continue her entrepreneurial endeavor. She doubled down her efforts, doubled sales each year, and in 7 years achieved annual revenue over $8 million. She sold her business to Estee Lauder. It was a good payday. Miguel profited by the scarcity of migrant labor in San Diego and raised rates. At Joe's harvest party, he still makes an appearance wearing a grand white hat and Corona in hand, surrounded by his children, college graduates, and grandchildren. Joe, unexpectedly, grew 2 inches and felt unwell, side effects from stem cell therapy. He quit visiting the clinic in Mexico. Paul's father died of a broken heart the day Robert E. Lee's statue was removed from Richmond's Monument Avenue and joined Leroy in heaven for a beer, where they talked about it and caught up on old times. With the assistance of the rescue eagles, Mark, accompanied by Miguel, returned to the no-man's land between Mexico and San Diego and erected white crosses for Lourdes and Rodrigo. He became a regular volunteer of the group, and then, through his church, assisted Central American refugees seeking asylum at San Diego's border. Each year, on the Day of the Dead, he placed the magic pesos, a serving of tacos pastor, and a shot glass of water from Lourdes, France, on the ofrenda altar in his home to honor Lulu's spirit and memory. And the wine? A happier ending. In the ensuing decade, San Diego's wines continued to improve and could match those of any region, taking into account climate, soil, and length of growing season. It was Paul's dream to put San Diego wines on the map, and the wines made it without his help, but with that of the Cougar, who became the best-known ambassador of San Diego's wineries. Carrie Ann was profiled in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Wine Spectator, BuzzFeed, and other publications, online and off, as the face and tattoo of California and Texas boutique winemaking. She split her time between San Diego and the Texas Hill Country, where she opened a tasting room. And yes, her wine club sells 10,000 bottles a year to University of Houston's Cougs and thousands more to Cougars throughout the country. They know who they are. Jenny Lee always told Carrie Ann, Mr. Right is right around the corner. He still is. I half expected she'd end up with Paul. They always got along, were good friends, and would have made a good couple. She never married. If you want to know why, you'll have to ask her. Don't think for a moment her life was somehow unfulfilled without marriage. It wasn't. She's led a rich life and travels all over the world during the vineyard off-season. She's had a few beaus over the years, but none of them stuck. Boyfriends are like driving on a bus, she says. One gets off and another hops on. How about the other Texans? Jenna Lee receives her full teacher retirement pension and combined with Harlan's savings, they live comfortably. She spends a lot of time in her backyard with flowers, herbs, vegetable garden, and chickens. She no longer flies her hairdresser down from Dallas to do her due, and instead enjoys braiding the hair of her grandkids, and lets Carrie Ann braid her thick silver mane from time to time. Jenny Lee inherited her parents' house in the Hill Country, and yes, can be seen on occasion helping out in Cougar Winery's Texas tasting room, a short drive from Fredericksburg. Carrie Ann mellowed a bit as she aged, becoming softer in temperament, like a well-aged wine, and the two women work as well together as they do sitting out back evenings under the stars, shotgun in one hand, wine bottle in the other, Jenny Lee practicing bird calls, Carrie Ann guarding the garden from any stray chupacabras. Stephanie, her cancer still in remission, thank God, retired from her corporate sales position and joined John's real estate firm and works part-time with John, who sold a stake in the business a few years ago to a younger partner. They are mostly retired now, with John tinkering in the garage and Steph, who prefers living near the ocean, spending most of her time at their Del Mar house within walking distance of Del Mar Plaza and the beach, where she's serenaded to sleep at night by the echoes of waves rolling onto shore. The house is within walking distance of the church by the sea, St. Peter's Del Mar, whose altar-guild ladies once rejected Paul's wine because it would stain the linens. Steph heard a call to return to the church, and, though once divorced, the Episcopal Church welcomed her, and the bishop himself ceremoniously received her. John volunteers as an usher some Sundays. An old friend contacted John and Steph last month, begging them to sell her house, to which they reluctantly agreed. Let's join them now as they show the property to a young couple. Young is a relative term, as Steph is 70-something and looks terrific, and John is closer to 90 than 80, and both are in good health, knock on wood. The middle-aged millennials searching for a new home are empty nesters, looking for property in San Diego's inflated real estate market. Prices driven higher because there ain't no more land being made. Homes near the coast are unaffordable, except for those whose families have continuously owned property in California or made it big, while prices in the countryside are lower. The couple parks on the road and walks up the driveway where Steph and John wait. Is that a hornet's nest? Asked the young woman, pointing to a balloon-sized mud bubble under the eaves. That's a swallow's nest, said Steph. There's something in it. It's moving. And from the nest emerged a swallow who took flight. My, "Take a look at that," John said to Steph, astonished. After admiring the bird's acrobatics, John turned to the couple and asked, "What are you looking for in a house?" "Something we can afford," the woman said with a nervous laugh. "A place with enough land for an organic farm," said the man. "Definitely a home in the country," added his wife. "We want to live off the land as much as we can. It would be ideal if the property has a house in good shape." "This land has been fallow many years," said John. "Any pesticides used in the past are long gone. You should be able to get this land certified organic easily." "What did they grow?" "The house was built in 1980. The first owner, a retired couple, planted kiwis. If you cut through all the scrub and weeds, you'll probably find a few stakes and posts used in the original kiwi farm. The rock paths from the original owners are over there," said John, pointing to a path up the hill, shadowed by majestic oaks. "What happened to the kiwi farm?" "The couple passed on, and when the house was sold, the second owners couldn't make money growing kiwis, so they cut the water and let the land go wild for 10 years. In 2006, the second owners sold, and the third owners cleared the land and planted grapes." "A vineyard?" "Yes, a vineyard. I sold the house to the third owners. It's a well-constructed house," said John. "A love nest," said Steph. "We used to come over for happy hours and pick grapes. I hauled grapes from the top of the hill to the garage where we crushed them." "How was the wine?" "Real good. I still have a few bottles." "We're thinking of planting a vineyard," said the man. "Really? Well, this may just be the place you're looking for," said John, who knew he had the sale. All he had to do was reel them in. The quality of the house and the views of the surrounding mountains and ocean would do that, and the couple had the vigor and funds to make it happen. "Have you heard of Cougar Winery?" Steph asked. "Who hasn't?" said the woman. "Cougar Winery started right over there," said Steph, pointing towards Carrie Ann's property. "The owner is my best friend. We went to college together, and both of us ended up settling in San Diego. We helped plant our first vines and make her first wine. Oh my God, you're kidding! Her wines are so good, we'd love them. A little expensive, but worth it." "If you end up buying this place," John said, "I'm sure she'll share with you ideas on which varietals to plant. She's generous with her time and likes to help young winemakers get started. My guess is you might even be able to use some of the old poles and trellises from the vineyard, and there might even be some vines. They built a pretty good vineyard here. Let's take a look." John followed the driveway past the freshly painted adobe white house. "If I remember correctly, this road turns into a path that takes us up the hill." And he recounted the day he met Paul, and they climbed the overgrown property and saw a bobcat on the ridge. The first time visitors were surprised by the magnificent views. They had never seen anything like it in San Diego. They rose above a jungle, a forest of vines, grapes gone wild. Squirrels barked alarms, and a flock of yellow-breasted orioles blasted from the vines, and those that weren't screeching held grapes in their beaks. "Is that overgrown ivy?" asked the young man. "Those are grapevines," said John. "It looks like some managed to survive and kept growing. I've never seen anything like it. I'm pretty sure you can prune them back and use them. We should ask Carrie Ann." A grove of giant palm trees lined the property's edge. The value of the palms alone justified the property's asking price. "Look, sweetheart, my favorite palms," said the young woman. "Look how large they are." "John, do you know what kind they are?" her husband asked. "That's a Canary Island date palm," John answered. "One is worth $10,000. So I've heard." A lone poplar, over 60 years old, rose above the other trees. "What's that creeping up that tree? Is that a grapevine?" asked the young man. "It sure looks like it," said John. "Hey, Steph, remember we saw grapevines growing up the poplars in Italy?" "Who could have imagined?" Steph said. "That sure is a big one," said John, "and strong. Imagine surviving all these years on her own." The grapevine extended her reach to the top of the poplar, a natural trellis for the plentiful grapes. Yellow birds circled the tree in delight, the vine freely offering her fruit. to the birds. Stepping cautiously, they reached a section of flatland. At the edge, the young woman said, "Look, the ocean!" "That's Catalina Island," said John, and he pointed out the peaks of Big Bear and Mount Baldy in the distance. What's this?" said the woman, bending over, pushing back weeds with yellow flowers. "There's something here." She wiped the marble slab with her hands and read the inscription, "To a faithful companion." I told Kate swallows had returned to the house. She had made the trip to Capistrano in the 4th grade with her father and knew the legend. Having a pair of swallows nest on the side of the home her father gave her was an auspicious sign, and she decided to keep the property, which contained the ashes of her dog and her mother. The next winter, she, with help from her brother and Carrie Ann, pruned back the vines.